Ironically, when we start to get better, we also often get sad because we realize how much we've missed out on, how badly certain people failed us, what the younger version of us actually deserved. Healing involves healthy grieving, no way around it. So I got this text this morning. Greetings, everyone. I got this text this morning about this, and it was a friend who we were having a conversation about this, about how grieving has to be such an important part of the healing process, but how none of us were really taught how to grieve, or that grief is important. So we don't really know what it looks like, what it's supposed to feel like, all of that. Good evening, hope all is well. Raining like cats and dogs in New York. I was talking to one of my New York peeps earlier today. Yikes. Be careful out there. But yeah, right? Like all that rain, the sky is grieving, it's releasing, it's refreshing, everything. And it's also been coming up a lot for me in being able to move things forward. Yeah, good thing you work from home. In this time that I'm in my life, it's so important to be able to let go of who I used to be and who I thought I had to be, and step up into who I'm realizing that I am now, in this current chapter. But that also, that like gap between who I was and who I'm becoming, that gap is grief, right? There's that space for grief. There's that space for releasing so that I can make space for what is to come in and who I am learning to be. Any new habits that I need to acquire, old habits that I need to release, right? So it's this constant process of grieving, letting go, right? And it's so beautifully modeled for us in nature, where leaves, parts of plants are dying all the time, but as one part of the plant is dying or a leaf is dropping, there's a new one coming. And I think also, like, it's different being somewhere where there's not really all the seasons. So I'm like, okay, so we're going into fall equinox, and there is this overwhelming sense of death and releasing and letting go. All the leaves turn color and they look so bright and vibrant, and then they release. And then they go into that rest and hibernation because they're building, right? The seed has been planted and they're building and they're getting ready for spring, for like that rebirth, that renewal, and then flourishing at the end of spring and into summer. So it's just going through these phases, and it's always like I get so stuck on thinking that things are linear. It's like, oh, this happened, so now this is going to happen. It's going to go this way. And I have to remind myself constantly, and this whole summer was that constant reminder that I need to step back and surrender and just let things be what they're going to be, as I figure out how to also be what I need to be able to be flexible and adjust to the way that things are changing. Right? I hope this is making sense. It's just a lot of things that are coming up for me about grief. And then it's like, I'm also wondering, like, how do we know what to let go and when to let go of it? Like when is the right time to let go of things? And this healing process is such a mixture. It's so layered. It's so multi-textured that it's kind of, at times it's difficult to be able to try to keep up with. I think one thing that I definitely want to focus on this page specifically, the Mind-Body Revolution, is the start of it. Like, how do we come into knowing what parts of us need to be healed, need to be held, need to be loved more? And that's in raising self-awareness, right? Raising your awareness is the first step. It's waking up, right? If you don't wake up, you can't be aware of all the things that are going on. You just stay in bed, you stay asleep, right? All the things that are going on the outside, you're not going to be able to keep up with that. So I think in raising awareness, one of the first things that I will continue to post about here is meditation and breath work. And breath work is really to keep you in your meditation, right? It's to keep you focused on your breath, keep you focused on the simplest yet most important, because it keeps us alive, most important aspect is your breath. It's always there for you, and it's also always coming and going, coming and going. Learning to inhale, take in what you need, exhale, release what you don't need, right? And maybe inhaling, and at the top of that inhale, at the space between the inhale and the exhale, there's that little bit of grief of like, oh, I have to let this go. Especially if it's like a nice, deep, good, yummy breath in, and then you're like, oh, I have to let this go, and then you have to let it go. Otherwise, again, you cease to continue breathing and cease to keep living in this life. So my grandfather died 4 years ago, so I know about dealing with grief, and I thought that I could handle it, but I couldn't, right? And you can. A lot of us think that we can't handle grief, and so we avoid it and we push it to the side. And I know our men in our culture get the message, like it's not okay to cry, it's not okay to be emotional. We can handle it. We can handle it. Like, you can handle it. And I think the part of it that feels really hard is when we're not really letting go. Like, we're grieving, but we're not letting go. We're not accepting, right? And we're not being compassionate and kind to ourselves within that process, right? There's so many layers to grief, and it's not only about death of people. You know, when someone's like, oh, I'm grieving, it's like, oh, who died, right? It doesn't have to be the death of a person. It could be the death of who you were 5 minutes ago. Like, we've been on here for a couple minutes, and let me take a moment to grieve the person who I was when I first came on here. Let me grieve the person who I was before I came on here, who didn't want to come on here, right? And we're constantly letting go, constantly letting go. So just learning to make way for that process is another important aspect of healing, right? So I just wanted to talk about grief. Thank you for sharing. And grief that doesn't have to be like this all-encompassing, over-empowering, emotional, deep cry where you feel like you're gonna fall apart, literally, right? It could be an inhale and an exhale, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna let that moment go and move into the next moment, right? That's also grieving. To me, grieving is the process of letting go, continually letting go, right? And knowing you're welcome, and knowing that we're capable of this, right? We could handle this. We're not given things that we can't handle and we can't navigate, and it's just getting this reminder that you can handle it and you can do it. But first, you have to become aware that it's there. You have to become aware of what it looks like and how it shows up in your life and how it sabotages you. And then the other layer to that is noticing how that sabotage feels like a reward to you. There's a part of you that self-sabotages, but then you get the reward of like, see, I was right. See, I knew it. I told you so. I know that I'm like this, right? So everything is multifaceted, multi-layered. Please be gentle and kind with yourself in this life process in general, and just being human, because it's not easy and it's not meant to be, right? The hard things are to help us grow and to help us build strength and resilience, and you just have to be consistent in loving and caring for yourself, right? So on that note, I'm going to do a little grief work myself. The energy feels really palpable right now at the full moon that we just had yesterday. I think it's a full moon in Aries. And I'm going to read this quote to you one more time. We're going to take 3 nice deep breaths in and out together, and then I will see you next time. All right, so the quote that I got was by Dr. Glenn Patrick Doyle. And it's ironically, when we start to get better, we also often get sad because we start to realize how much we've missed out on, how badly certain people have failed us, and what the younger version of us actually deserved. Ooh, get into inner child stuff right now. Healing involves healthy grieving, no way around it. All right, let's take these breaths. I'm gonna place a hand on my heart, hand on my lower belly, and take a deep inhale. Open mouth, exhale. It's Friday, sigh off that week, let it go. Another inhale. Exhale. One more inhale. Exhale. Thank you. Bye.